Good morning, all. Hey, welcome to Fossil Creek Nursery's continuing series of live stream plant talks. My name is Dan Hartwig. I'm a Colorado certified nursery professional here at Fossil Creek Nursery, and today we are going to be talking about the number one rule of horticulture, Horticulture 101. The first thing that you are ever taught in a horticulture or landscape design class is the following phrase: right plant, right place. I use that phrase with every customer I talk about: right plant, right place. Well, what does that mean? I mean, what it means simply is that choosing well-suited plants to the location will give you plants that perform well with minimum inputs, with minimum labor, with minimum water, with minimum amendments. And the great thing about that is it all ties into an idea we call plant health care, meaning it's so much easier to prevent insects and diseases, including abiotic problems, meaning problems with that plant that are not caused by an insect and disease. Bugs, fungus, viruses, bacteria, they like sick and sad plants. They don't like happy and healthy plants. So right plant, right place. Here is the single most important thing about the right plant, right place concept. Don't start with the plant you want in your landscape. I'm going to say that again because it's really important. Don't start with the plant you want in your landscape. Start with the place and choose a plant based on that. I mean, I have customers that, one of the most spectacular plants we sell here at Fossil Creek is the Japanese maple. Customers see this thing, they ask, where could I put this in my landscape? And I describe the perfect spot for it. The perfect spot for a Japanese maple is in well-drained, loamy, acidic soil with protection from both winter sun and winter wind. So if you have a courtyard at your place or a protected spot with mature trees all around it, fences around it, that's the right place for that plant. Now, of course, most northern Colorado homeowners unfortunately not going to have the right place for a Japanese maple. So instead of getting, it's really easy to get enamored with a specific plant. It's like, I love the Japanese maple. I'd love to have a magnolia. I'd love to have, a weeping cherry. They are spectacular plants. Every plant we sell here at Fossil Creek Nursery, I tell our customers, are perfect for someone, somewhere. And the way that we as, amateur landscape designers, homeowners, is to start can make that happen and have a great looking landscape is to start with the spot, not the plant. All right. So here's a few easy ways to evaluate your spot. The very first criteria we're going to take into consideration when evaluating our spot is sun. Now, when we talk about full sun here in northern Colorado, we're only talking about 6 hours a day. It's really important to remember that we have a mile less atmosphere diffusing our sunlight. Plants that would be considered, maybe part shade in San Diego or, Portland, Oregon, we can consider them full sun here in Colorado, even if they only get about 6 hours a day. 4 to 6 hours a day, we consider part sun or part shade. It's a glass half full, glass half empty explanation. But again, 4 to 6 hours, part sun or part shade. And less than 4 hours, we're going to consider that full shade. Now, again, that goes back to starting our selection with evaluating the spot rather than evaluating our dream plant. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is, when evaluating our spot, is soil. I say this again and again when I'm talking to customers about doing a little thumbnail landscape design sketch for them, is almost every plant that we sell at our nursery prefers well-drained, loamy, acidic soil. We don't have any of those things in northern Colorado. What can we do as growers? Well, We never want to replace our soil. We want to amend our soil. And the way we're going to choose to amend our soil is again going to be based on the plant. Remember, we're going to start with the spot, not the plant. I'm going to pick a spot to work at in my landscape, and with the help of some research, always research using the word extension in your Google search. If I want to learn about a Japanese maple, type in Japanese maple extension. That way you're going to get a state university's horticulture department, and they're going to tell you both the positives and the negatives about growing that particular plant. To be perfectly honest, if you look at our website, we are not going to say too many derogatory things about any of our plants. We're going to show some awesome pictures. We're going to give you good, solid facts about that plant. But when you're doing research at home, use the word extension. Okay. Now, evaluation of our soil. Not only are we talking about our soil texture and chemistry, the nutrients or lack of nutrients, we also need to talk about the drainage of that soil. We need to consider if that soil is wet, normal, or dry. Plants hate wet feet. I'll tell you that right away. Planting in a wet spot is going to give you the least choices for a plant. Planting in normal moisture soil is going to give you the vast majority of choices for a plant. Planting in dry soil is going to limit, but not severely, what plant you can choose for that spot. Remember that in addition to thinking about the soil, the drainage, our soil texture, our soil structure, how well or poorly that soil drains, another consideration in picking the right plant in the right place is to look at the trees and other plants around it. Remember that well-established trees are going to have extensive root systems. That means they are going to be hogging, taking more than their share of the water and nutrients. So in addition to soil, definitely consider the root systems of established plants when you're picking right plant, right place. Third major consideration, and this is a hugely important one for growing here in northern Colorado, is your water source. The way to think about this is hose bib. That's where you connect the hose to the house. Hose bib plants versus hose end plants. What do you mean by that, Dan? Well, what I mean by that is put the plants that will need the highest amount of care, highest amount of water, closest to your water source. Put the plants that thrive on abuse and neglect at the end of the hose. So, think about high water, hose bib plants. High maintenance, hose bib plants. Low water, end of the hose plants. Low maintenance, end of the hose plants. If I was going to plant a Weigela Florida, higher water use, we're going to put that closer to our structure, where it's easier to be getting at it with the hose. If I'm going to plant a Russian sage, that thing thrives on abuse and neglect. That's a hose end plant. I'm going to put it where I can occasionally get around to checking on it. Now, at the same time, this talk I'm giving today isn't going to hit on xeriscaping much of the concepts, but considering our water source for selecting the right plant, right place is going to really tie into one of the most important principles of xeriscaping, and that principle is hydrozones. You want to group plants together that have similar water use. I do not want to put a river birch next to a Russian sage. Low water use, high water use. Okay. Next consideration in choosing the right plant or the right place is, let's think about the traffic pattern in my landscape. Is this a plant that I'm going to have to go out of my way to see in the landscape? Is this something that I've tucked in a corner out of the way, or is this something that I'm going to be walking past every day? For example, shrub roses do great here. I can't say enough good things about shrub roses. Shrub roses love full sun. With the right care, it's going to be one of the most prolific flowering plants you can buy as a shrub rose. However, if you choose a white shrub rose, which is absolutely spectacular, and you're going to walk past that thing every day. If your guests and your family and traffic are going to look at that plant every day, I'll tell you right away, white shrub roses, they look horrible with spent blooms on them. With a red or yellow rose, yeah, the spent blooms get a little crusty and dull, but on a white shrub rose, they look hideous. They're going to look gray and soggy and gross. Hey, if you're willing to put in the time and go deadhead that every day or two, that's the perfect plant for a high traffic area. If that's not your priority, it may be a time to pick a different plant, something that doesn't need deadheading, doesn't need continual pruning. Okay, next principle I'm going to talk about in right plant, right place is how to deal with structures and hardscapes. For example, I've got plants that just love to be blasted by full sun, that love the heat. If you're going to put something up next to a brick wall, just remember, it's going to absorb and reflect that heat and light. Again, don't start with, I would really like to put a such and such plant in my landscape. Start by describing to your nursery professional your site, and we'll come up with a great solution together. Now, again, something like a brick wall will reflect light and heat. Consider something like, if you're going to use a snow melt on your hardscape, on your walk in the winter. Or if the city, you live in a place where the city is going to put mag chloride on that road, it's going to splash up onto your landscape, something to consider. One of the most important things we can consider, though, in right plant, right place when it comes to structures, hardscapes, is what we are going to put at the base of our plant. I'll tell you right away, the vast majority of plants hate, I'm going to say that again because it's really important, hate landscape rock. Landscape rock has two serious problems and a third, which I'm going to touch on. First problem is it gets hot in the summer. It's going to desiccate your plant. It's going to dry out the root system. Landscape rock looks great in certain applications, but plants, with a very few exceptions, do not like to be planted with landscape rock again around them. The other problem with that is rock, especially light-colored rock, is going to reflect sunlight to the underside of those leaves. Flowering plants have spent the last 60 million years adapting to getting sunlight from above. Sunlight from below freaks them out. It's not part of their natural life cycle, and remember, we as growers are trying to replicate the natural life cycle the best they can. Sunlight reflected onto the underside of flowering, broadleaf flowering plants can trigger the wilt response. Broadleaf plants, deciduous plants, they evapotranspire, they breathe by using tiny little structures on the bottom of their leaves called stoma. Sunlight onto that will trigger the wilt response. That plant will curl its leaves as a defense and basically stop breathing. Of course, a grower is going, you and I as a grower are going to react to that as, okay, my plant is desiccated, it's dehydrated, we're going to put more water on top of it. So long story short, landscape rock and your plants are not friends. Of course, the biggest problem with landscape rock, especially when with weed barrier on the underside, is we're really choking off the soil system from all of its natural processes, from being able to add organic material to that soil in the form of decomposing mulch, and also it's going to prevent enough water, nutrients, and air get into the ecosystem of our soil. All right, turf grass, also an enemy of flowering plants. Trees and turf grass do not get along. Both living things, really different evolutionary paths, really different water requirements. Turf grass likes frequent, shallow waterings. Trees want the exact opposite. If you're in a situation where you decide the right plant, right place actually is in the middle of your turf grass, we're always going to recommend that you segregate your turf grass from your tree with a protective ring and mulch. Additional reason that trees and turf grass disagree with each other so much is that if you skip the step I just talked about of segregating your trees and your turf grass with mulch, you're going to have to mow and string trim right up to that tree. The root flare, that is where the main leader of that tree basically hits the ground, is one of the most vulnerable parts of that tree, especially if that tree was grafted, which a lot of common nursery trees and landscape trees were when they were very small. A ding with a lawnmower or string trimmer can kill a tree, even a reasonably well-established one. I'm sure there is a horticultural term for that kind of injury, but in our industry it calls it lawnmoweritis. All right, mulch. When you come up with consideration of structures, hardscapes, mulch is our friend as growers. Mulch, rather than turf grass or rock, gives us a lot more choices as far as what the right plant, right place, what we can get away with planting in that spot. All right, this is a big one. USDA hardiness zone. What this is, this confuses amateur growers. Remember, USDA hardiness zone doesn't really give us much information about the survivability of a particular plant. It only gives us one piece of information. That piece of that is useful to us when we're planning right plant, right place in our landscape. That piece of information it gives us is what is the minimum sustained winter temperature that that plant can endure. In northern Colorado, we live in USDA hardiness zone 5. There's A's and B's. It's really outside the scope of this discussion. Important thing to remember, we live in zone 5. What does that mean? That means that the lowest sustained winter soil temperature, not air temperature, soil temperature we can expect for our plants is 0 degrees. Now, you come into a nursery, you'll see a plant that says USDA hardiness zone 2. Well, that's not zone 5, but that's good news for you. Remember, you can plant living in zone 5. That means we can plant zone 5, zone 4, zone 3, zone 2. There's no such thing as zone 1 because that's Arctic, just like there's no such thing as zone 10 because that's tropical, assuming that the soil will always be frozen or never be frozen. As a nursery, state law says I cannot sell you a plant that is not hardy to at least zone 5. You come to Fossil Creek Nursery, we're on 15 acres. Every single plant we sell will grow in Colorado. Now, why are we going to recommend some over others? And it's exactly this what we come back to, right plant, right place. Hardiness zone is a very, very small part of the whole equation. All right, now let's talk about plants in containers. Plants in containers look great. There's a lot of good things about putting a plant in a container. It looks nice, it gives you additional structure and texture and color to your landscape by picking out a really neat looking container. But the plant if we decide the right plant, right place is in a container, we're going to recommend that you choose a plant that is at least 2 USDA hardiness zones colder tolerant. In that case, if I was growing in northern Colorado, I would not put anything that is hardy to anything less than zone 3. So normally a plant that could grow 2,000 miles north of here in Saskatchewan is going to be a zone 3. Why would I need that? I mean, here's the problem is, in a container, that soil or potting mix, if we decide to use it, is not going to hold in the heat and the water. It's going to, in the ground, our roots are going to get frozen and stay frozen. That's perfect. Problem is, in a container, those roots are going to freeze, thaw all winter long, and your plant is really going to struggle. So if you do decide that the right plant, right place is in a container, look for something at least USDA hardiness zone 3, 2 zones lower. All right, let's talk about some other factors in right plant, right place. Salt. Not just road salt, not just home snow removal through snow melt. A source of salt that's troubling in a Colorado landscape is from manure-based composts. I would recommend never using a compost with manure in it when planting a tree, shrub, annual, perennial. Save that for uses like top dressing your turf grass or your vegetable garden. The thing about our Colorado clay soils is what we put in that soil, it stays in that soil nearly indefinitely. So if we're putting salts into our soil in the form of manure composts, our soil just does not drain well enough to leach out that salt. And sometimes you can get a precipitate of salt on the surface. Plants hate that. It's going to struggle mightily. All right. Height under windows. That's something to consider. You will see on the grower's tag of every plant, you'll see something, for example, this plant gets 3 to 4 foot tall, 3 to 4 foot wide. Well, that's an average. In northern Colorado, hey Liz, having a little computer trouble, going to sort this out. I'm going to keep talking. I'm hoping you can still see me. In northern Colorado, when you see a plant that the grower says 3 to 4 foot tall, 3 to 4 foot wide, looks like we're up and going again. Thank you. Err on the expected to be the lower size because this is a harder place to grow than Oregon, than San Diego, than the Mid-Atlantic, than Omaha, because of our two biggest challenges: our miserable bad soil. Of course, our soil is heavy clay, alkaline, poorly drained. And it's not that our winters are difficult in so far as they are cold. They are difficult because they are dry. Just remember that dry soil is going to heat up, cool down throughout the winter and really put some stress on our plants. So height under windows, of course, anything I'd sell you is a living thing. I can't make any promises for its behavior. We could pick out a plant where the grower's tag says 3 to 4 feet. It could love that spot and gets to 6 feet tall. Narrow spaces. Columnar plants are the future of my industry. I've started to talk to customers and I tell them, listen, your concern is not an unusual one. If people wanted to look at their neighbors all the time, the nursery business would really be struggling. Tall, thin, columnar nursery plants to provide screening in narrow spaces are a big part of our business. Don't think you're going to come across as a horrible person because you say, I just don't care to look at my neighbors anymore. None of us care to look at our neighbors any more than we have to. So that's a consideration for narrow spaces. Some final thoughts about right plant, right place. These are things that I've just learned in my career as a nursery professional and as a home grower. Let's talk about evergreens. Evergreens look great. It's super to have a nice combination of broadleaf, deciduous, and evergreen plants. Evergreens never stop growing. Evergreens grow until the day they die. On a grower's tag for an evergreen, it will give you a 10-year height on it, a 10-year width. For example, if I sold you a compact gem Bosnian pine, the tag is going to say 12 foot tall, 6 foot wide. That's just off the top of my head. I'm sure it's close to that. And does that mean that tree is going to stop growing? It's like, no. That's what it's going to be at 10 years. It will slow down, but it'll grow till the day it dies. So as a consideration for right plant, right place, let's always think about choosing something that's going to take a long time to outgrow our space. The other thing I hear from my customers, and well, we won't be around to see that. I understand that the human life expectancy is often exceeded by that of plants. But if you put a Picea pungens, a Colorado blue spruce, within 8 feet of your house, it's going to look really nice when it is a small little ornamental tree. But in 10, 20, 30 years down the road, if you own that house, if you're living or not, someone's going to have to pay a lot of money to cut down and kill a really beautiful living thing. So remember, right plant, right place. Remember that on evergreens, that is what you see on that tag is a 10-year estimate. It will grow until the day it dies. Winter interest. Um, Another thought to consider when choosing right plant, right place. We usually think of only evergreens, conifers, as having winter interest, but there are some plants that look reasonably interesting even after they've dropped their leaves. Red twig dogwoods have winter interest, even though that plant is completely dormant, lost its leaves. Its twigs and stems are bright red. It is actually really appealing to look at in the wintertime. A a twisted, irregular tree like a Kentucky coffee tree or Ohio buckeye, even when completely dormant, without a single leaf on it, is going to have some winter interest. My final thought on winter interest is I've talked to a lot of customers about doing little thumbnail consults on their landscape, and I have tried to remind myself over the last few winters, which I take off from this business, how much do I look at my landscape? And the answer is very, very little. All right. Right plant, right place. Shearing is not pruning. I'm going to say that because that's really important. Shearing is not pruning. Customers and people, I do this in my own landscape. I have gotten obsessed with a plant. I said, this plant has got to be in my landscape. Well, first of all, remember, nothing has got to be in your landscape. Hey, we're in charge of it. We're on 15 acres. You're going to find something cool here if you stop by here. You don't need any particular plant just because someone has recommended to you. It's one recommendation out of many. If my conversation with a customer gets to the point to say where I have to say, sir, ma'am, I really think this is not the right plant for your place because this is going to outgrow your space and it's going to outgrow it rather quickly. The answer is, can I prune it? Well, remember, pruning is for the health of a plant. Pruning is putting on your long sleeves, getting your Felco F2, best horticultural tool ever designed. Please don't buy a cheap one. Felco F2 is taking off things that are dead, damaged, diseased, crowded, crossing. That's for the health of the plant. Now, shearing is controlling the size of a plant using, by cutting. Shearing is almost always, with very, very few exceptions, going to be detrimental to the health of your plant. You're going to get an ugly, sickly, misshapen, bad-looking plant if you try to control its size with shearing. Now, with some judicious pruning, can we make something like a deciduous tree a little narrower in habit? Yeah, a little bit. But again, right plant, right place. To be honest, I would rather do less pruning in my landscape rather than more. So instead of finding something you like and trying to force it into the size, I wouldn't want someone to decide that they'd really rather have me a foot shorter. Okay, habit. What do I mean by habit? Habit is the shape and texture and size of a plant when it's mature. Habit is things like single stem versus multi-stem. For example, one of my favorite trees is the autumn brilliant serviceberry. Technically, its natural habit is multi-stem. It's a 25-foot shrub. The thing to remember is there is no difference physiologically between a shrub and a tree. All woody plants are woody plants. It's just what we decide to call it. So I have two choices in habit. We have ones that have been branched up to give you a traditional tree shape. We have multi-stem. I am always going to argue that if a plant's natural habit is multi-stem, that's the way to pick nursery stock and to grow it. When you pick something that's natural habit is multi-stem as a branched tree, meaning lollipop shaped, it's normally going to do very well. The biggest problem is it's going to spend the rest of its life trying to become a multi-stem. We sell a reasonably toxic hormone product that'll stop it from doing that, but again, Felco F2, made in Switzerland, lifetime warranty. It's the best $60 you'll ever spend. All right, habit could also mean things like how loose or open the habit is versus how tight and formal. the example I give is a Kentucky coffee tree and a Norway maple are both going to be really similar size. Those are both going to be trees that are 50-foot tall, 35-foot wide when mature. However, the habit is vastly different. Not only the shape is different, but how open, how, something like a Norway maple or a linden is going to have a tight, dense, formal look. If that's what your landscape wants to look like, you want it to look like perfect. If you want a loose, irregular, slightly more whimsical tree, Kentucky coffee tree is your answer for that. All right. Here's one of my last points I'm going to make in right plant, right place is remember you live in northern Colorado. I am not from northern Colorado. I grew up in New Mexico. My lovely wife actually is a native of Fort Collins, Colorado. But more people than not did not grow up in northern Colorado. We have a lot of imports from other places around the country and around the world. Avoid the temptation to become nostalgic about what you planted, about your favorite plants from where you lived before. A lot of the times they are going to seriously violate the right plant, right place. Yes, I mean, if you're from the American South and you enjoyed growing up with magnolia, yeah, I can sell you a magnolia. It's hardy to zone 5. It is going to be very difficult to find the right place for that plant. Whereas in the Mid-South, you could plant that thing in pretty much anywhere you could dig a hole. Avoid nostalgia. Embrace what grows well here in northern Colorado. You may think it's going to limit your choices, but you come see us here at Fossil Creek Nursery, 15 acres, and you are going to be just absolutely astounded by the choices. Talk to your nursery professional, get their input, and I'm gonna thank you for stopping in today, and thanks for listening to my talk about right plant, right place. Is there any questions I can answer? All right, we're gonna go log off. Hey, thanks for your time today. Thanks for stopping in, and have a great day.